dare enter, a place forgotten by time, where shadows breathe, and the dead still remember. Sit, watch, and do not look away.
The first thing we noticed was the smell. Thick, heavy, sweet, like rotting candy floss. It clung to the air even before we saw the gates, tall iron bars twisted into the shape of grinning clowns, their paint peeling, their smiles too wide. The sign overhead was barely readable. Welcome to Wonder Park. None of us remembered it being here. Not yesterday. Not last week. But tonight, under the low-hanging fog and the pale sickle of the moon, it looked as if it had always been part of the town, just ignored. Forgotten. Curiosity got the better of us. It always does. We pushed open the creaking gate and stepped inside. The park was silent. No laughter, no music, only the soft crunch of gravel under our shoes and a distant drip of water from rusted pipes. Rides stood motionless in the mist, skeletal remains of joy. A Ferris wheel loomed in the distance, cabin swaying gently even though there was no wind. The merry-go-round horses were frozen mid-gallop, their painted eyes cracked, their mouths snarled into broken smiles. We hesitated just past the gate, the heavy fog swirling around our ankles like curious fingers. "Maybe it's abandoned," Jenna whispered. "Or cursed," Danny smirked, trying to sound brave. We all laughed nervously. And deeper into the park we went. Because turning back felt wrong. Almost impossible. As we passed the ticket booth, its glass shattered, the cash drawer dangling open. A light flickered overhead. Then another. And another. One by one, the rides and booths lit up. Not brightly, no, but in a sickly, dying way. Flickering bulbs buzzed overhead, casting long, writhing shadows through the fog. The Ferris wheel groaned as it began to turn, slow and shuddering. The carousel lurched into motion, horses creaking and twitching as if waking from a long, painful sleep. None of us spoke. None of us needed to. We all felt it. The park was awake now. And it had noticed us. Somewhere deep within the park, we heard it. Faint at first, a giggle. High-pitched, childlike. "Run!" It echoed between the crumbling booths and rusting rides, growing louder with each step we took. Jenna clutched my arm. Danny muttered a curse under his breath. Still, we pressed forward, drawn deeper into the web of light and mist. Every booth we passed seemed frozen mid-motion, stuffed animals sagging from rotted strings. Water pistols cracked and dry, balloons deflated into wrinkled skins. The laughter grew. Now it wasn't just one voice. It was many. And they were getting closer. We stumbled into a clearing where an old prize booth stood under a crooked canopy. The sign above it read, "Everyone wins." Faded toys lined the shelves inside, dolls with missing eyes, teddy bears with mouths stitched shut. A bell sat on the counter, tarnished and green with age. Without thinking, Danny reached out and pressed it. "Dane." The sound cracked through the fog like a gunshot. Instantly, the laughter stopped. The carousel halted mid-spin. The Ferris wheel froze, cabins dangling like broken teeth. Silence fell over the park. The kind of silence that feels eluded. Watching. Waiting. Jenna grabbed Danny's hand. "We need to leave," she whispered. But the paths behind us were gone, swallowed by the mist. From behind the counter, something moved. At first, just a twitch, a shuffle of cloth, then a figure slowly rose into view. It wore the remnants of a carnival uniform, striped red and yellow, moth-eaten and stained dark at the cuffs. Its head was a sack, stitched crudely into a smiling clown face, sagging and damp with some unseen moisture. No eyes. No mouth. Just black stitched lines that flexed with every shallow breath. It lifted a gloved hand and pointed, not at Danny, not at Jenna. At me. The stitched mouth twisted wider, and behind it, from the shadows of the booth, dozens of smaller hands began to reach out. Grasping. Hungry. I didn't wait. I grabbed Jenna's hand and pulled her backward, away from the booth, away from the thing still pointing at me with its twitching, gloved hand. Danny stumbled after us, glancing over his shoulder. The fog seemed thicker now, pressing against our skin, slowing our steps. From the corners of my eyes, I saw the carnival coming alive again. Figures moving between the rides, too thin, too tall, their limbs bending wrong. The laughter returned, but it wasn't distant anymore. It was right behind us. Right beside us. Whispering our names. Begging us to stay. The paths no longer led where they should. Every booth, every ride shifted when we weren't looking. Doors moved, alleys stretched. The ground itself seemed to pulse and breathe. We ran past a popcorn stand where the machine spun endlessly, filling the air with the sickly sweet stench of burnt sugar. Past a shooting gallery where the targets were no longer metal ducks, but mannequins with blank faces, twitching when the gun barrels turned. The laughter followed, threading through the fog, a net closing tighter. I risked a glance behind. Shapes were moving in the mist. Too fast. Too many. The carnival wasn't letting us go. It was leading us somewhere. The path opened suddenly into a clearing. At the center stood a towering structure, a funhouse sagging under its own weight, lights flickering weakly around its rotted frame. The entrance yawned wide, lined with spinning spirals of red and black. Painted words above the door read, "Laugh until you break." We hesitated, but the mist behind us thickened, pushing forward like a living wall. No choice. Danny led the way, sprinting into the funhouse. Jen and I followed, the laughter shrieking behind us, closer than ever. As soon as we crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut. The spinning walls swallowed us whole. And a real nightmare began. Inside, everything was wrong. The walls stretched too high, tilting at impossible angles. Floors rippled underfoot, soft as old carpet soaked in something warm. Mirrors lined every surface, but they didn't reflect us. Instead, they showed twisted versions, Jenna grinning with bloody teeth, Danny with empty black sockets for eyes, me, grinning wider than my face should allow. We stumbled through the corridors, slipping, falling. Doors appeared and vanished at random. Sometimes the walls breathed, slow, wet sounds, like lungs straining. And behind it all, layered between the distorted reflections, the laughter never stopped. It only grew louder. And closer. Jenna screamed first. I turned and saw it. One of the mirrors bulged outward, as if something behind it was pressing against the surface. A face. Not hers, not mine. Something else. It grinned, a lipless, skeletal stretch, and pounded against the glass. Cracks spiderwebbed across the mirror. The others began to pulse too, faces pressing, arms scraping, mouths moving in silent, frantic pleas. Or were they laughing? Danny grabbed Jenna's hand and pulled her forward. We ran blindly, mirrors shattering around us, shards raining like knives. And with each crack, more shapes spilled free into the funhouse maze. We sprinted through the twisted corridor, slipping on the warped floor. Ahead, a door slightly ajar, pale light leaking from its edges. Danny reached it first, shoving it open wide without a second thought. But it wasn't an exit. It was another trap. Inside was a perfect copy of the prize booth, the same cracked sign, the same sagging canopy. And behind the counter, the stitched clown waited. Its head tilted slowly, the stitched mouth stretching wider as we froze in place. On the counter in front of it lay 3 items: a cracked mirror, a rusted iron key, a ticket stained dark at the edges. The clown raised one gloved hand and pointed at them. Choose. Behind us, the broken laughter of the mirror things grew louder. Time was running out. Danny cursed under his breath. Jenna clutched my sleeve, shaking her head, tears brimming. The clown's stitched mouth quivered, almost like it was laughing. The cracked mirror shimmered, showing flashes of something moving behind the glass. The key pulsed faintly, warm even from a distance. The stained ticket seemed to breathe, its surface rising and falling like lungs. Without thinking too hard, because thinking too long felt dangerous here, I grabbed the key. The clown's hand twitched. For a heartbeat, everything went silent. Then the floor beneath the booth split open with a sickening crack. And the world tilted, pulling us downward into the dark. We tumbled down a chute slick with something wet and foul-smelling. The walls closed in, brushing against our arms, our faces, soft, fleshy, pulsing like they were alive. Jenna screamed. Danny shouted my name, but the chute twisted violently, separating us. I slid alone through the darkness, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. When I finally spilled out, I landed hard on cracked concrete. The air was thick and hot, stinking of rust and old meat. Above me, the funhouse loomed, but it wasn't the cheerful, broken thing we had entered. It was pulsing now, breathing. Alive. And somewhere deep inside, it was still laughing. Waiting. The ground beneath me wasn't solid anymore. It flexed slightly under my weight, like thin ice over deep water. Shapes moved under the surface. Slow. Hungry. I stumbled to my feet, calling out for Jenna, for Danny. No answer. Only the whispering, soft, wet sounds leaking up from the cracks in the floor. The walls around me weren't made of wood or stone. They were stitched fabric, stretched tight and pulsing with each unseen heartbeat. Somewhere ahead, faint and flickering, I saw light. A carousel. Spinning in the darkness. But the horses weren't wooden anymore. They breathed. The carousel spun in slow, jerky circles. Its music was warped, dragging out notes into long, painful wails. The horses know they weren't horses anymore. Their bodies heaved with ragged breaths. Their sides split open with every rise and fall, exposing slick ribs, twitching muscles. Some had human eyes. One turned its head slightly as I approached, its mouth stretching into a toothless, gaping grin. A child's laughter echoed from somewhere deep within it. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. The carousel groaned louder, the creatures twitching, straining against their poles. Reaching for me. At the center of the carousel, there was a rider. A figure slumped on a monstrous steed stitched from scraps of skin and rusted metal. The rider wore a mask, an old cracked porcelain face with red spirals painted over empty eye holes. It swayed with the motion of the ride, limp and broken, as if barely clinging to existence. But when I moved, it twitched. The masked head snapped toward me with a jolt, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. The empty eye holes locked onto mine. The carousel slowed. The breathing things on their poles began to jerk violently, tearing at their restraints. The rider lifted a gloved hand, beckoning. I couldn't move. The masked rider's hand stayed raised, fingers curling slightly in a silent summons. The carousel groaned beneath the weight of its monstrous cargo. Every horse, every stitched, breathing abomination, strained against its pole, head snapping toward me. The ground beneath my feet pulsed in time with the rider's breathing. I took a step back. The carousel shrieked, a metal on bone screech, and lurched forward, dragging itself off its base. It was coming for me. The rider's hand dropped. The broken music twisted into a new frantic tune. And the chase began. I turned and ran. The floor heaved beneath me, rolling like a stormy sea. Behind me, the carousel scraped forward, its horses shrieking, their legs tearing trenches into the ground. The masked rider never moved, but somehow, it stayed closer with every heartbeat. Tunnels split off in every direction, some lit by swinging blood-red bulbs, others swallowed by perfect blackness. I took the first one I saw. The walls pulsed around me, stitched seams stretching and tearing as I shoved my way deeper. Far behind, the carousel screamed. And ahead, something else answered. Something worse. The tunnel narrowed. The fleshy walls squeezed tighter, wet and shivering against my skin. From the darkness ahead I heard it, a wet, slithering noise like something dragging itself across the ground. I froze. Shapes shifted in the dim red light, small, hunched things crawling on all fours. Their bodies were thin, twisted. Limbs too long, joints bending wrong. Their heads were wrapped in carnival masks, smiling, crying, screaming, but the faces beneath twitched violently, desperate to tear free. One lifted its head, sniffed the air, and then they all turned toward me, hissing, scraping, charging. I ran, heart hammering against my ribs. The crawling thing scrambled after me, their fingers, no claws, raking deep gouges into the pulsing floor. Every breath burned my lungs. The tunnel twisted violently, sloping downward, the walls squeezing tighter with every step. One of the creatures lunged. I ducked, feeling the brush of its broken nails rake across my shoulder. Ahead, a faint light glowed, green, sickly, flickering like a dying flame. I forced my legs to move faster, ignoring the claws snapping inches from my ankles. Behind me, the horde shrieked. Hungry. Close. I burst into the light, stumbling into a massive chamber bathed in that sickly green glow. It wasn't empty. Carnival booths lined the walls, but they weren't like before. Each booth contained a figure. People, or what was left of them, strapped to rusted chairs, wires plugged into their heads. Their eyes were wide open, mouths stretched into silent screams. Above them, faded banners hung, winner's circle, biggest smiles. The air smelled of burnt sugar and rot. And in the center of the room, a new carousel. Smaller. But this one didn't carry horses. It carried people. Chained, spinning endlessly, begging with their eyes. The carousel spun slowly, creaking with every turn. The people strapped to it twitched, their bodies slumped, their faces slack, drained of everything that made them human. Their mouths moved silently, mouthing words I couldn't hear. Their skin was waxy, stretched thin over bone. As I inched closer, I saw the chains around their wrists and ankles, tight enough to cut deep to fuse with the flesh. Above them, a cracked speaker crackled to life. A hollow, sing-song voice droned. Round and round you go, where you stop nobody knows. The carousel shuddered. And the faces turned toward me in perfect, jerky unison. Their eyes. That was the worst part. Not angry. Not hollow. Pleading. Each face twisted with desperate hope, as if I could somehow free them. Save them. But when I took a step forward, the floor beneath the carousel split open, and from the darkness below, long blackened hands reached up, grasping, tugging at the chained figures, pulling them downward inch by inch. Their mouths opened in silent, gaping wails. I stumbled back, bile rising in my throat. The carousel spun faster. The chains snapped taut, and the figures began to vanish, one by one, dragged screaming into the pit. Only one figure remained on the carousel now. A child. Small, limp, hair matted with blood. The chains around their wrists were fraying, thin strands snapping under the pull from below. Their head lolled to the side, and when their eyes met mine, something inside me cracked. It was Jenna. Or something that looked like her. Her lips moved silently. One word. Help! The carousel groaned under the strain, the pit below widening, swallowing more of the room. Without thinking, I lunged forward, arms outstretched. But the ground between us split open like a mouth, and I fell. Down, down into the dark. I plunged into blackness, the air thick like syrup. The world spun wildly around me, snatches of the carnival flashing by. The Ferris wheel, spinning backward. The house of mirrors, its glass bleeding. the carousel of broken bodies, turning endlessly in a storm of fog. Through it all, I kept falling. Until, with a sickening jolt, I landed hard. The ground was soft. Wet. It pulsed beneath me like a living thing. I staggered to my feet, heart hammering. Around me stretched a landscape of nightmares, rides twisted into monstrous forms, tents stitched from human skin. And at the center, the ringmaster waited. He stood atop a platform of broken bones, his red jacket stitched together from countless scraps of torn carnival tickets. The top hat on his head was cracked and rotting, tilted jauntily over a face lost to shadow. No eyes. No mouth. Just a shifting void, as if staring into him could pull you in and drown you. In his gloved hand, he held a crooked cane, its surface writhing as if alive. As I stared, the ringmaster raised the cane high. The ground shuddered. Tents twisted upward like grasping hands. The rides groaned and screamed. And the carnival itself bent toward him, waiting for his command. Waiting for me. The ringmaster lowered his cane, pointing the twisted tip directly at me. The carnival responded instantly. The rides shuddered closer. The tents groaned, their seams splitting open to reveal endless rows of hollow-eyed figures. Behind me, the ground cracked, vomiting out a Ferris wheel car, rusted and half-melted, its door yawning open. An invitation. A sentence. The ringmaster tilted his head slowly, a gesture both mockery and command. My knees buckled. The air was too thick, too heavy. Each breath tasted like rust and ash. There was no escape. Only the ride. Only the crown. My legs moved without my permission. Step by step, I staggered toward the ruined Ferris wheel car, its metal groaning with every breath of wind. The figures in the tents watched silently, their hollow faces twisted into masks of pity or hunger. The ringmaster stood still, the cane tapping once, twice, setting the heartbeat of the world around us. As I neared the cart, the door creaked wider, revealing a velvet seat soaked dark with something I didn't want to name. Inside, the air reeked of iron and smoke. Behind me, the carnival chanted in one voice, low, rhythmic, hungry. Round and round, round and round. The moment I crossed the threshold of the cart, the door slammed shut behind me. No lock, no chain, just the will of the carnival itself sealing me inside. The seat sucked at my body, warm, wet, pulsing with a heartbeat not my own. The cart lurched upward. No noise. No gears. Just rising, higher and higher, into a sky choked with black mist. Below, the carnival shifted endlessly, forming grotesque patterns, twisting faces, reaching hands, endless spirals. The ringmaster watched from the ground, tiny and still, his unseen eyes burning into me. The higher I rose, the more the world unraveled. And at the very top, something was waiting. Something old. Something hungry. The cart jerked to a halt. I hovered in absolute silence. Above me, the mist churned, thick, oily, alive. And then it parted. Something vast and shapeless floated there, its surface writhing with countless mouths and eyes. A thing too big for the sky, too old for memory. It stared down at me, or maybe through me, and the weight of that gaze crushed the air from my lungs. One of its mouths peeled open, revealing rows of broken teeth. A voice, layered and endless, crawled into my mind. "You will stay, you will spin, you will feed us." The cart began to descend. But the real fall was just beginning. The cart plunged downward, faster than any ride should ever move. The wind tore at my face, but no sound escaped my throat, only the pounding of my heart, the hiss of the thing above fading into distance. Around me, the carnival stretched and twisted, melting into a spiral of colors: red, black, rotten yellow. I glimpsed flashes as I fell, the carousel beasts tearing free, the clown mask crawlers devouring new victims, the tent stitched from flesh pulsing like a giant wound. And through it all, the chant of the carnival never stopped. Round and round, round and round. Faster. Deeper. Toward something waiting at the bottom. Something final. The descent ended with a jolt. The cart slammed into a floor not made of earth or metal, but something soft, warm, and wet. I staggered out, legs barely working. Before me stood the black heart of the carnival. A massive, pulsing thing, veined with rotted banners and broken ride parts, beating slowly, rhythmically, like a war drum. Each thud sent ripples through the ground, making the stitched tents tremble, making the dead rides shudder. At the base of the heart, a throne waited, woven from broken carousel poles and rusted Ferris wheel struts. And above it, hovering like a noose, a crown, made of teeth, waiting for me. The crown spun slowly in the mist. Each tooth glistened wetly, some cracked, some sharpened into cruel points. The throne pulsed in time with the black heart, almost breathing, almost alive. I knew, deep down, what it meant. The carnival didn't just trap souls. It crowned them, made them part of itself. The ringmaster wasn't a ruler. He was a prisoner, the last fool who sat here. And now it was my turn. Behind me, the mist thickened. The voices of the trapped souls rose in a deafening chant. Wear it, wear it, wear it. The crown descended toward my head. I dropped to my knees, covering my head. The crown hovered inches above me, humming with sick energy. The ground beneath me shifted, bones rising through the wet flesh, forming skeletal hands that tried to lift me upward. Behind me, I heard the ringmaster's cane tap once against the ground. A signal. A command. But somewhere inside, past the terror and the exhaustion, a sliver of defiance flared. I didn't have to put it on. I didn't have to feed the cycle. The hands clutched at me harder. The crown pulsed, demanding. And I realized I had one chance. One impossible, suicidal chance. I lunged sideways, rolling off the fleshy platform. The crown shrieked, not with sound, but with pure, stabbing pain that sliced through my skull. The skeletal hands clawed at empty air. The throne trembled violently, cracks spidering through its frame of broken rides. The black heart above let out a deafening, wet thump, sending shockwaves through the entire carnival. The ringmaster's shadow surged toward me, arms outstretched, as if trying to drag me back into my rightful place. But I ran, straight toward the base of the black heart itself. Straight into the monster's core. Because if I couldn't win, maybe I could burn it all down. The surface of the black heart wasn't solid. It gave way under my hands, warm and wet, as I plunged my arms inside up to the elbows. The flesh burned. It pulsed and shuddered, trying to spit me out. But I forced deeper, groping blindly for anything, a weakness, a core, something to destroy. Behind me, the carnival screamed. The rides twisted in agony. The fog churned into furious storms. The ringmaster howled, a soundless, soul-wrenching wail. My fingers brushed something cold deep inside the heart. A knot. A pulsing nerve. I gritted my teeth, wrapped both hands around it, and pulled. The moment I yanked the knot free, the black heart convulsed violently. A scream tore through the carnival, not from any mouth, but from the place itself. The ground split open beneath me, vomiting rivers of black mist and writhing chains. The tents collapsed inward, shriveling into piles of rotting cloth. The Ferris wheel crumpled like wet paper. The carousel beasts shrieked and burst into clouds of ash. And the ringmaster, he disintegrated. Piece by piece. Hat, cane, mask, gone. The sky split open, pouring raw, blinding white light down onto the ruin. And for the first time since I entered, the fog began to thin. I had broken the heart, but I wasn't safe yet. The carnival collapsed around me. Tents melted into puddles of blood. The midway rides screeched and twisted, devouring themselves in whirlwinds of sparks. The mist recoiled, hissing, peeling back to reveal the cracked earth of the real world beyond. I stumbled forward, lungs burning, muscles screaming. The black crown, still hovering in the air, cracked, splitting into 1,000 splinters that rained down like dead stars. The ground behind me crumbled into a bottomless pit. The throne, the black heart, the stitched shadows, all of it was being swallowed. I ran. Ran through the last gap in the fog. Ran until the carnival was just a nightmare behind my eyes. But I wasn't alone. Something had followed me out. I collapsed onto cracked pavement, the remnants of the carnival dissolving into mist behind me. The real world, or what was left of it, stretched out under a gray, dead sky. I should have felt relief. But instead, I felt watched. The air was too still, the shadows too thick, and deep inside my chest, something pulsed. Slow. Steady. Not my heartbeat. Something else's. A whisper curled around me, not from behind but from within. Round and round, round and round. I staggered to my feet. Ahead, on the distant horizon, a new tent rose from the ground. Black. Breathing. Waiting. The carnival was never meant to stay in one place. It had moved inside me. And the show was just beginning.
The tale is over, but the darkness remains. Subscribe, or stay forever, in the silence between screams.